How's it going, everyone? This is OzDeadmeat. Welcome to video 5 of installing DDC2. Okay, so in this video we're going to cover downloading DDC2 from GitHub, configuring the PowerShell script from DDC2, adding the DDC2 Node-RED data flow into Node-RED, configuring that flow, and then finally some testing and usage. Let's get started. So here we are back on the server now. What we'll do is we'll load up Google Chrome and we'll head over to GitHub and we'll grab the latest release hot off the presses and we'll open it up, grab the files, and we're going to browse to our games folder, DDC2, and we're just going to paste it in here. Okay, next thing we're going to do is we're going to run PowerShell in admin mode. We're going to go to G drive, CD, into the DDC2 folder. Now we're going to load DDC2 into memory again, the PowerShell script. And what we're going to do is we're going to check DDC2 PowerShell. So this is a function that's inside it. So you have to load DDC2's PowerShell script into memory before you can do this. And when you run that, what it'll do is all of these are checking to see if the file actually exists. Like the DCS dir here, does this file exist? Yes, it does. For the these other ones here, they're basically saying they don't exist or they're not found. Some of these are hierarchical, so some of them rely on, like the config here relies on the DCS profile working. So we'll start at the top and we'll go down. So let's open up the file and have a squiz. So the only thing it would seem to be missing is the user ID for my user on the server. So I'll save that and we'll run this again. Everything's coming up green. We are good to go. So the next bit we're going to do is we're going to load the flow into Node-RED. Let's get on with that now. Alrighty. So what we're going to do is we're going to edit the JSON file here in Notepad++. We can hit Control A, Control C, so it's copied. And now we're going to go over here and load up our Node-RED, put in our username and password. Okay, and what we're going to go up here is go File, Import, and we're just going to paste it into here and go Import. So what we'll have done, it will have created a new flow called release v1.163 delta, which is the current version, and there you've essentially got the flow there. Now before we save it, we're going to delete this one line here. So just click on it, it goes orange, and then hit delete, and then we're going to hit deploy. Now you'll get an error saying bits aren't configured. That's fine. We just want to get it deployed so it's in the system, and then we'll see what the variables are and we'll start changing stuff. So we'll hit confirm there. Okay, so the exclamation points here at get message and a few over here are basically saying that these aren't configured. We'll configure those. The main things that you guys are going to be configuring are these up here, which is your host ID, what the ID you want for DDC2 to be for when you're referring to this server. If you've got any downtimes, you can put that in there, and then we set the permissions and the channels up. So let's start up with these settings up here, and then we'll move on to getting the Discord component working. Okay, so these are pretty self-explanatory. If you wanted to say, okay, this server is hosted by OzDeadmeat, then you could put your own Discord ID in there, and if you've got a DNS name or an IP address that you use predominantly for your server, you can put that in there and hit done. You'll get this little blue light for any variables that aren't actually deployed yet. So if we would hit the deploy now, we'll hit confirm again. That'll actually say, oh, it's hosted by OzDeadmeat. So this gives you an idea of what's been configured and what hasn't been configured. The primary one that we need to configure is the DDC2 server ID. So we'll call this one. So again, getting rid of the brackets as well. We'll call this test DCS. So test-DCS. With the server ID, it can't have a space in it. So just keep that in mind. You can't have spaces in your server IDs. And we'll hit done on that, and we'll deploy. And again, we'll confirm. Okay, so the next bit we're going to do is we're going to configure the permissions and the channels. Okay, so before we get started on this, we're going to need the information that we set up in the previous video with all of the role IDs for our DCS server. So I'll bring that up now. I have made one addition, which is this line here. I have added a standard member role. Now that role has no permissions on any channel anywhere, but for a person to be able to utilize any of the DDC2 components, they're going to have this role added. So your admins won't need it because they have hierarchical permissions to do everything, but for a standard member to be able to run the basic stuff, you're going to need this ID. So I'll grab this ID now, and we'll jump into our permission set, and we're going to put the info group as that group there, and we're going to just put a name over here called members. It's handy just to have the name of the group that you've actually named over here as well. That makes it a little bit easier to track if you're troubleshooting later. So I'll grab the power user group now, and we'll go back in, and we will hit that, and we'll call that PWR power user, and we'll grab this one here, and we'll put that into admin. Okay, so what that will do is when we hit done on that, that's going to basically mean that those groups can run these commands. So the info group here, that will be added to the info array. So the info array has got the info group ID, the power user ID, and the admin ID. You could actually create a group per command here, and then this is how the commands are broken up here. Now you can change these to be whatever you want, but it needs to be an array. Whatever it is, it can't just be a single ID, it has to be an array. Other than that, it should just go. Let's hit done on that, and we'll deploy that. Again, we'll get an error. Okay, let's set up the channels now. So similar to what we did last time, we're just going to open it up, and we'll bring this up as well, and we're going to just configure the admin, blue, red, and log channels. So this should be pretty quick. So we've got the log channel here. Oops. Log channel is there. Next one is server C2, which will be there. Next one is the blue channel. And lastly, the red channel. Okay, and we hit done on that, and we'll deploy again. Hit OK. So that concludes pretty much all the minimum setup you need to do for essentially the server config variables up here. You can add the other bits and pieces like your ISP and downtimes and all that sort of stuff, but to get this thing working, that is the minimum set. Now what we're going to do is we're just going to tweak setting up the Discord bits, and we'll also check that the PowerShell path is correct for our PowerShell script. Let's do that now. But before we can set that up, we need to go get another bit of data that I forgot to get when we were doing this earlier. So we're going to head over back to our application, and then we're going to go to bot, and we're going to copy this token ID here. So we'll hit copy there. Now that that's into memory, we'll go back to Node-RED, and we'll double click on here. We'll hit the little thing here, and we'll go DDC2 bot, and we're going to paste our token in there and hit add. And that's going to then create a bot selection, and we hit done. And then we're going to come over here, and we're going to select the bot. Now we'll also select the channel ID. So this is the server log. So that's this channel here, and we'll Control C that. Oops. And we'll paste that here. And this is the admin channel here. These are actually quite important that we set as well. And we'll put that in there and set that. Done. And down here, this one doesn't need an ID. We're just going to hit the DCS bot there and hit done. And now we're going to hit deploy. Okay, so finally what we'll do is we'll check to see that the PowerShell script is in the right location here. So we'll double click on PowerShell, this PowerShell block here. Now this location should be the same for all versions of Windows. So that shouldn't be needed to be checked, but what we do need to check is to make sure that this path here is correct. So what we're going to do here is copy this and we'll just paste it into, let's go over here and we'll just paste it into here and it should come back to where the DDC2 file is. When that's done, we're pretty much ready to go at this point. So let's get on with some testing. And the way we'll do the testing is we'll load up Discord here. So the quickest way to do a test with this is to literally run the test command. So we'll jump into this channel here and we're just going to put in test. And look at that. So that basically says that the bot is now talking to the server and everything's working okay. The next thing we might do is a status. And we need to put test. I don't think it's case sensitive. And it's going to run PowerShell and it's going to come back saying, okay, this is the utilization, server uptime, it's been up for 2 hours, server name, DCS is offline, and give you some statistics that way. Fantastic. Now, one of the other things we might want to do as well is we want to just check to make sure that these files here, so where other users are going to access, can also test. So this in general should not reply, and it doesn't, so that's good. So we'll go over here and we'll put in a test here. That's replied, so that's good. And we'll put a test here. And that's good. And we'll just do a final check to make sure that all of the files here, now it's saying everything's been granted and everything's all good. Fantastic. So that pretty much says that everything's working okay. So now what we're going to do is we're going to attempt to load DCS. But before we do that, we're going to do a system restart. So let's actually do that in PowerShell. Let's do that in Discord as well. So what's going to happen here is the server should restart. So we're going to go restart test-DCS. And if this works, everything should go blank for us because I'm typing this on the server that it's running on. So let's see what happens. Well, it helps if I run the actual right command. So rather than do that, let's try a reboot. Test DCS. And see if that works. There we go. I'll be back in a moment. Okay, so the server's just finished rebooting. And you can see here that Node-RED is operational, started flows. And what we're going to do now is let's load back into Node-RED. Okay, so we'll actually delete this flow 1, we don't need it, and we'll hit the deploy button. And everything's now set over here, so what we'll do is we will just quickly run DCS and tick the box that says automatically log in. Sorry about the sniffles, guys. I do have a cold at the moment. Okay, so we tick that box and then we'll hit login. But these aren't the credentials I'm going to use, so I won't do that for the time being. I'll put some new credentials in and then I'll do that. Okay, new credentials in. and server is loading. So I'll give it a few minutes, and then we'll kill the process. In fact, let's do that from inside Discord. Okay, so back to here, and what we're going to do, we're going to go stop, and it's killed the DCS process. Thumbs up. So everything's looking pretty good at this point. So now what we're going to do is we're just going to run through a standard startup. So we're going to run, so this will show you what the server actually does when it starts the server. Start test-DCS. So the first thing it starts is DCS itself, and the second thing it starts is SRS. And then what I've got it doing is it'll actually resize the windows so it doesn't take up so much of your space. So that takes about 2 or 3 minutes. So I'll mute my mic and allow things to fast forward a little bit. Okay, so the server's loaded, it's resized the windows as you can see here, and it's shuffled them over to the side. Now, we'll quickly go through what happens once it's completed starting. It'll run a detailed report, and this will actually read stuff. So predominantly, this data is coming out of all the config files. So where it says port 18001, that's out of the DCS config file. This one here for LOTAC, it's being read out of the LOTAC file. Grabbing the versions, all that sort of stuff, configs, all that stuff's coming out of the config files. But to get an actual status on what ports each system is working on, like what everything's listening on, we run the status on the server instead. So what this should now do is it should report all the ports that are listening. So one thing we'll notice there, the server's been up for almost 5 hours now. DCS has been running for 3 minutes. SRS has been running for about 3 minutes. This is the port that SRS is listening on, and these are all the ports that the DCS process is listening on as well. And one thing you'll note there is that it's not listening on port 18004, which is your telemetry port. And the reason that is because it's not because the server is paused. So what we'll do is we'll jump over onto the server now. Let me just refresh this page. Change that to 18005. Connect, and we'll hit the resume button, and then we'll switch back to here, and then we'll run that again. So and there it is. So it's listening on port 18004 now because we've unpaused the server. So that pretty much brings everything to a close that I wanted to show on the server. One other key factor is enabling slow mode on anything that users can send messages to it on. So if it's just the general users, set it to about 30 seconds on these channels. That way they can't respond, like they can only send a message every 30 seconds. On this one, because the more advanced commands can be run from this channel, I usually set this one to about 2 minutes. Now, again, normally you trust your admins. The main reason why we do this is so you can't overwhelm the server, but you can. So if we write info, so info reads stuff from memory rather than running Powershell, so it's very, very quick. So as you can see there, the replay times are very, very, very quick. And if we run that here, it's mind-blowingly fast. Yeah, it's less than that long. It's not very long at all. So that's about it. That's all I've got to show with DDC2. Please leave your comments in the messages below if you've got any questions. And yeah, as new functionality comes in, I'll be sure to add some new videos, but this sort of concludes the how to download, install, and get the DDC2 bot working for your DCS server. Whoops, almost forgot. One last thing before I go, guys. Make sure you reconnect this bit here. So what this is when the server restarts, it will then run through and do an automatic update on the server. So make sure you've reconnected that and then hit deploy again, and you should be all good. Okay, so that's it. Any suggestions, comments, feedback, please put them in the comments below. All my contact details are in the description of the video. Again, thanks so much for watching this video series, guys. I hope to put some more updates into DDC2 over the next months, years. I don't know how long or how well this will be received, but yeah, thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time. Cheers. Bye.